Hey friends, welcome to the part 2 of how to sew a bucket hat. Um, and in part 1, if you missed it, there's a live feed earlier that I did where I showed you how to cut out your pattern, strategic placement, some scissor or shears maintenance, as well as some cool tips on marking tools that you can use and why you might need to really line up your pattern with the grain line. And here in part 2, I'm going to show you how we put those pieces together to make a reversible bucket hat. So like I said, in part 1, we cut out our pieces. So we are making a reversible bucket hat. So I have my bucket hat body in dogwood denim with my print on it. If you want, you can also get this print on Spoonflower, again in dogwood denim. That is their brand of denim, and that's our red, white, and blue zebra print under Seamless Stacy on Spoonflower. So I have my body in that. I have my hat brim in that, and I have my top, and then I also have my top in my cotton, which is the reversible side. This cotton is a custom print that I got on Etsy in the TMR Tours shop on Etsy. This is 100% cotton poplin. It's a really nice tight weave to create a nice soft fabric, especially once it's washed several times. And when you wash it, it holds its color. So that's why I really love getting fabric over on TMR Tours on Etsy. They have a lot of really cool custom prints. FYI, if you haven't noticed, that is my Etsy shop. So please head over there, check those out. I'm really proud of these. So that's why I sew with them pretty much exclusively for my cotton prints. And then again, I also have my hat brim and my hat body. So when we cut these out before, if you remember, we have 2 pieces for each. And to start, what we're going to do is we're going to stitch these pieces together so that it's one circle. And when we cut these out, we made a 3/8 seam allowance on the faceplate of your sewing machine. It should be labeled with different measurements and things. If you can't read them, you can always measure out, 3/8 and make a line, follow the line. Or if you stitch with a certain seam allowance pretty consistently, you can easily grab some masking tape or some painter's tape, something that's like a very light adhesive so you don't get your faceplate all gooey, especially if you need to still be able to open your bobbin housing here. And you can tape on your faceplate your stitch line so that all you would have to do if this ruler was tape, all you'd have to do is put your fabric under, line it up to that tape mark, kind of like that, and then very easily just sew away. So like I said, when we cut these out, we made a 3/8 stitch line. So that's what we're going to do here. Line it up, make sure there's enough fabric under the needle so that you don't shove that fabric down inside. Give a couple back stitches. And we're done. I do heavily use my thread cutter on the side of my machine. I think it's really convenient and handy just to quick cut and go. And just mimicking that seam allowance on both sides. Now I'm going to take my hat body and do the same exact thing. And now that we have those stitched together in a circle, we're going to butterfly these seams open, give it a light finger press, and we're going to stitch this seam open. And I do it from the wrong side so that I can do 1/4 of an inch from this center seam. So I line it up with the edge of my presser foot, and so that makes it almost to the edge of the fabric. Because we did 3/8, you can do a 1/4 top stitch, butterfly stitch, whatever you want to call it. We're pressing the seam open and stitching it down. Just be careful of the rest of the hat fabric. You don't want to catch it in your seam because then it won't be a nice loop anymore. So then that's kind of what it looks like, and from the outside you've got that. So we're going to repeat that process on all 4 of the outer hat seams, the 2 on the upper part of the hat and the 2 on the hat brim. Not only does this reinforce the seam that you made originally, it's also decorative. Makes it look cool and pretty from the outside. So it's function and fashion all at once. So right now it just kind of looks like a headband, but got our double seam there. And that's the main hat body. Again, when I say finger press, that's all it means is opening that seam and kind of flattening it with your fingers. If you want to, you can certainly use your iron and press it open. Last one here, press that open. And the reason I don't pull this out and clip here is because I'm just going to turn this right around and come back, so I just pull it just enough to create the slack that I need and just line it up and go. That way I don't have to waste any more thread than I need to turning it around and getting it going. So now that I have my side seams done, I'm going to grab some pins and I'm going to grab my hat top. And here's where those notches that we made when we cut our pieces, here's where those really come into play. So this is a front and back notch, and I had made some side marks here. They're really light because they're to the inside. If you want, you know, on your pattern, you could even do a double notch to the sides if that helps you to line things up, because the sides are going to line up to the seams. The notches are going to line up notch to notch. Sorry. So the front and back is going to be notch to notch, that little triangle that you cut out, and sides are going to go to that side seam. So you find your front notch, find your front notch, line those up, and pin it in place. Now, find your back notch and your back notch on the top of your hat, line those up, and pin it in place. Now, you can go to your sides, line up your side markings with your side seam, and do it on the other side as well. So now, kind of like a compass, north, south, east, and west, you have 4 pins equally distributed, and then you should be able to very easily work this excess into this curve and give it a pin. You put as many pins as you want between the top and the side. I usually only put 1, but if you need 10, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to get that curve in correctly. I'm just gonna pin this real quick. Because just like the rest of our seams, this is gonna be a 3/8 seam around the top. And the reason why you pin tops and sides first is so that you can evenly distribute the rest of the circle between those 4 points. So see how it kind of is creating this little bowl in here, which makes it really easy to sew then. So then I usually like to start close to the side, and I usually go hat, like the top of the hat up, couple back stitches, and away we go. Keeping just enough tension on it so that we don't get ripples between the pins. Now, if you do get a little bit of a ripple, it's okay. Don't panic. For the most part, if you've pinned it, you really shouldn't get rippling. As you go around, try to work it with your fingers and spread that fabric out so that you're not catching anything on the bottom that you shouldn't be. And you go as fast or as slow as you would like. Circular sewing is, you know, it's not always terribly easy for everybody. It took me a very long time to get semi-confident putting in sleeves for shirts. You know, the arm's eye is not something that was easy for me to learn and get it down smoothly, but I found that really taking your time pinning and distributing the fabric how you need to was key. I know that I need just enough pins to hold it in, but also give me some space to actually sew and not do like 3 stitches and then pull a pin and 3 stitches and pull a pin. Also, I know a lot of people who put their pins in horizontally like this. They will stitch right over them and be perfectly okay with it. That's fine. I have hit a pin before that way, and it scared the bejesus out of me. So I like to pull my pins before I run them over. So if you've ever broken a pin or a needle as you've been sewing, it is probably like one of the scariest things. Especially if you're somebody that sews with your face down close to the machine. You know, got to protect your eyes. So now we're where we started. We've clipped, got a little bit of an edge, but we've already started to take shape here. At this point, it kind of is like a scrub cap, if you will. Which is kind of the goal. So now that we have our top to our sides, we're going to attach our brim the same way we attached our top. We're going to find those double notches and line them up to our double notches. And what I'm doing here is there's a lot of kind of floppy fabric, but I kind of am folding the brim into the hat. So the outside is what's showing out to me. So, and make sure that your right sides of the fabric are together. Otherwise you will get a hat that is omnidirectional, and we're looking for reversible, not omnidirectional. So now that you have your double notches pinned, you're going to pin your side seams to side seams. And really try to get those to line up. If you've done a decent job at sewing your top stitches at exactly 1/4 inch, everything should line up pretty nicely here. So now you'll kind of see that this curves on its own pretty naturally, which is nice, but I'm still gonna give this a pin right there. And again, curves pretty naturally, but we'll give that a pin. And 2 more. And again, kind of like the sides to the top, if you have cut your notches or made your marks correctly, this should go in pretty easily, line up really nicely. Nice and even and flat is what we're going for. And for this part, because this is a circle, what makes what might help you to make this a little bit easier, because a lot of people, I mean, you have your machine on a table. There's no doubt that you don't. Nobody sews in their lap. That would be ridiculous. But you can take this compartment off of your machine. And now, why you would do that is because then this makes this that much smaller, and you can very easily, I'm going to tilt down just a little bit so you can see, there's a space under here. So now you can put this in the machine. Oops, sorry for the bounce, but you can put it in the machine and then see how this like nests underneath. So you can very easily and tightly run this in a full circle without having to struggle. It is running underneath it, not under the table, it's running under the machine, and it helps that much more. So you can pull this taut, and it rests more, the hat will rest more naturally as you're sewing to help give you an easier circular seam. So once again, we're going with a 3/8 seam allowance. Gentle tension to hold everything together. And you can go as fast or as slow as you want. I like to go sort of medium pace so that I can make sure that things aren't rippling and bubbling, and just give it a feel. Because there's nothing worse than like feeling really good about it and then flipping it over and finding 1,000 wrinkles. And if you ever do want to flip it and just kind of check, like, oh, there's a ripple here, so I need to like smooth it out a little bit. Always needle down, take your foot off the foot presser, off of the off the pedal, because if you're going to be in here fiddling with your fabric to get it smooth, you do not want to accidentally press on the foot pedal and then run your finger over. That would be terrible. Occasionally just giving that a little bit of a flick on the underside to make sure that everything is nice and flat. Usually right here at where the notch is where sometimes it starts to create a little bit of a ripple, so I'll usually pick this up, flatten it out, put it back down. We should be good to go. And we're almost there. And there we are. So, check that out. This is the one side of our bucket hat. It's the cotton side. As you can see, it is crazy floppy. But what will give it its stability is the other side. The next side that we do is the denim side, and that's what gives it its stability. So you do the same thing with the denim. And I actually, a few moments ago, before I started this, I did start a little bit, and I already did my side seams and butterflied them open. So what I'll show you here is how we do this. Again, it's the notch to notch. Now the denim is a little bit less forgiving. It is a very heavy duty fabric. So unlike the cotton, it is not as easily and quickly manipulated in the machine. And actually very, very easily will ripple itself. And it's really important on the top piece that we get this together correctly. Otherwise, it just gets all bunchy. And this, you can't just like pop a couple seams and fix it. You have to like take everything out and really adjust it. But I've found a little bit of a trick that helps make this process a little bit easier. And some people may find it redundant, but believe me, I think it helps specifically for this circular sewing scenario. And I promise I wouldn't do it unless I felt that it helped, because I'm all about streamlined efficiency and, you know, zero waste. So what I do here is I will change my stitch length all the way to 4. And what I'm going to do is a very, very tight seam allowance, probably it's about 1/4 inch instead of 3/8, which I know is very close, but it helps set it in so then you can do your 3/8 seam allowance without ripples and bubbles. And if you do have a couple from that distance, you can easily work them out. By increasing my stitch length and putting this in at a smaller seam allowance, this technique is a variation of basting. Based stitch is a long stitch that is put in for temporary purposes. For our purpose, we will not be taking this stitch out. It's really more just to guide us where we need to be to put this hat on. Be careful when you go over your side seams. This is denim and it is quite thick. Because it is a cotton denim, I did not change my needle, but you can change your needle to a denim needle if you feel that your machine needs that. I've done this a few times now and know that this machine has the power and strength to pretty easily work with this cotton denim with a regular needle, especially since I've recently changed my needle, so it's still pretty sharp. Almost all the way around, which is great. All right, and there we have it. Pretty nicely set in. That's pretty superficial. So now I can take this, I'm gonna put it kind of in the machine so it sets up, almost looks like a drum, and do my final 3/8 stitch all the way around. So it'll be the proper seam allowance. And when I set this up, my hand is inside here, kind of guiding the hat side to keep it nice and smooth. And like I said, this is just a lot easier to do once it's kind of already set in. Almost forgot to change my stitch length. And here we go. Right. And I know that probably doesn't look like a huge difference here, but it really helps set that up so that you can put in the proper seam allowance and get a nice set in top without ripples. It almost looks like a cake. So now that we have our top seamed in beautifully, we can take our brim piece, like before. We're going to set it into the hat right side to right side, and line up our 4 points. So again, right side to right side seam to side seam. Double notch to double notch. And then again, since you have your 4 points, then you can do your intermediaries, so you get a nice distribution of fabric. Because the point of doing this distribution is because it's circular, so you want to make sure that you are putting an even amount of fabric all the way around, so you don't get ripples and bubbles and then awkward tightness in certain spots. This should, you know, line up nice and even all the way around. And again, I like to kind of start here at a side seam. And again, we're going to take this and put it into the machine so that the hat goes in this space underneath, and it can go around the machine itself. That is what I think truly makes putting this brim on the easiest, the most successful, kind of like how I double stitched that the top part, which honestly, I think putting in the top of the hat to the body in the denim is the hardest part of this whole project. So if you can get through that, that is the hardest thing. So again, we're just gonna do 3/8. Kind of guide your fabric underneath to eliminate those ripples. It can ripple all it wants beyond your seam allowance. And in fact, it's going to. It's a bucket hat. The outermost part of the brim is wider than your seam allowance. So if it wants to ripple a ton over here, let it. That's fine. Where you're stitching under the needle is where you want it to be flat and crisp as possible. Because then once we have both of these pieces, then we can put our hat together, and I will show you how we can make it reversible. Almost there, almost all the way around. Again, you take this as fast or as slow as you need to. I like to take this at a pretty, I think what's a medium pace, because I really want to make sure that it's pretty flat so that I avoid having to take anything apart. And I say that, and check this out. I went almost all the way around, and my bobbin ran out. Boo. Awful. I hate that. I hate it. I hate it so much. But it's not the end of the world. It stinks, but I do have a bobbin handy. Just thread that up real quick. Where did this lose place? Okay. Isn't that the worst? Who else has been ever working on a project and then like your bobbin just gives up and you didn't know until you're done? I'm sure it's happened to all of us. It's happened to me so many times. Not a huge deal. I'd be more mad if this was the top, because like I said, the top is, I think, the most difficult. All you have to do is kind of find, overlap 3 or 4 stitches of where it let go, and backstitch, and start again. So it stinks, but it's not a huge deal. We can totally make this work. Again, kind of giving the hat the shape it wants to naturally be under the machine. I apologize for the arm. Makes it so much easier to handle. Like, it's incredible how just giving your piece the room that it needs to just be can help. Especially when you're circular sewing. Don't be afraid to like really handle this if you need to. It's denim, so like it's gonna fight you just a little bit, but it's not too bad. Again, just kind of work with it. Let it take shape. Line it up. Just be calm. You know, no, my bobbin ran out. No reason to freak out. Just get a new one going. And start over. No reason to fret. No reason to get distraught. It's just a little bit of thread. And there we have it. This is now the second part of our bucket hat. And I'm going to turn this one right side out. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm sorry, I'm a step ahead of myself. I'm going to leave it wrong side out. And what we're going to do to make this a reversible bucket hat is now I'm going to take my cotton and put it right sides together. So that's print to print inside of this hat, and I'm going to line up my side seams. I'm going to give that a pin. Go to my other side seam, line those up, give it a pin. Now, I don't have notches or markings for my front. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll line up my side seams, and this hat makes kind of a nice little half circle. And what I'll do to find the middle point is just fold it where it naturally wants to lay and pin the front center or back, whichever. And then on this side, do the exact same thing. Kind of make sure the edges line up. Fold it kind of in half at the side seams, pull it down straight. And then right where that is there, that'll get a pin. And then if you want to pin this more, feel free, go ahead. At this point, I only do my 4 pins, my 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock pinning, north, south, east, west, because I found that this lays together really nicely and naturally on its own, and I'm very comfortable with how it holds itself. The most important thing, and I'll usually throw this is the only place I'll throw in an extra pin so I don't forget. If I'm going to start my sewing here, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and I'll actually start right here above this seam. And then I'm going to put this pin about here. So what will wind up happening is I will have about a 3-inch opening that I leave right here on the brim's edge. That is where we will turn our hat right side out. Don't forget to leave that part open. Otherwise, you're going to have a hat that is wrong sides together. So make sure to leave that space open. Again, 3/8 seam allowance all the way around. This is why I put this pin here, because I foolishly have closed up my hat before and went, yay, I finished, and then forgot to leave the opening. Boo. You don't want to forget to leave this open. Leave it open. because now what you're going to do is you're going to turn your hat right side out. This sometimes can be a bit of a struggle. That's why, you know, take your time. Try to gently push everything through. You don't want to rip your fabric. So just gently work it through. I know this probably looks a mess and doesn't look like anything right this second, but there is a certain point at which it pops through. Huzzah! And now you kind of have a hat. It is right sides out, starting at your side seams. You'll want to, you can either finger press this if your fabric is cooperative like mine is, or you can take this over to your ironing board, press this brim flat, whatever you want to do. Like I said, mine is cooperable, so I just kind of give it a good finger press. Made it all the way around. For this part, I like to push the cotton into the denim, so I'm working denim side out. And what we have left here is our opening. And what you're going to do is you want to turn that down 3/8 of an inch. Line up your edges. And what I like to do to give this a really nice finish is I will actually hand stitch this shut with a invisible ladder stitch. So I grab my hand needle, I knot this 3 times to help hold it in. You got to kind of start from the inside and line that up with your machine stitches. And then I ladder stitch it shut, which is a invisible seam. I do try to keep the stitches pretty tight, even though to finish this hat, we are going to stitch the brim for both style and stability. So this will keep our seam allowance tucked inside, and then we'll reinforce that with a top stitch around the edge. And I am pretty practiced at this, so it's quite easy for me to pick you know, pick up the little edge here. It is a very minute amount of fabric. You know, it's probably 1/8 of an inch at a time from side to side. But it's only a couple inch opening to get across. And I find it easiest to flip it here, but some people will leave a gap in the body of the hat and then do a top stitch. But because I make my hats reversible, I like to do a hidden seam so that there is no top stitch except for the decorative ones around the brim. Just knot that off, and then if you do one final understitch, it should help pull that knot to the inside. It won't completely go in, but it'll go in most of the way. So that's how you close the edge. And now we can do our final round of top stitching. I will put my table back together here. The first stitch all the way around the edge, and you can pin this, clip this, whatever you need to hold it in place. I am pretty comfortable as is. I'm going to line this up 3/8 of an inch away from the edge for this first round of stitching. Make sure you backstitch. And you really want to make sure that that's right, like the edge is very flat and flush. If you do a really good job on this first round, all of the subsequent rounds after will be very easy. Again, right here, just be careful. You're going through the side seam, several thicknesses. This part of your project will take up a lot of thread, so, you know, be prepared. And there we go. There is the seamed edge of the bucket hat. It is completely together. It is completely reversible. See how those top seams all line up? And there we go. Bucket hat, reversible. Now what I will do to actually finish off my hat is I will continue stitching all the way up to the edge. That gives this brim a little bit more stability and style, but you can stop here or keep going. So that is how you stitch your reversible bucket hat together. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and hopefully it helps you make your bucket hat. I'm Stacy and I will see you between the seams.